Okay, now this is part 2, chapter 4, and I'm on the top of page 37. As the brothers raced upstairs, Natalie chuckled to herself and then leaned in towards my cage. And that, Humphrey Hamster, is what is called reverse psychology. You get people to do what you want by telling them to do the opposite. Reverse psychology. Remember, it's pronounced psychology. So that's how people's minds work. Just tell them to do the opposite of what you want them to do. You can sure learn a lot at college. You can learn a lot from a good babysitter, too. The next afternoon, AJ came over to Garth's house to play. Mrs. Tugwell took Andy out to buy new shoes. Mr. Tugwell was paying bills in the kitchen. The boys were alone with me in the family room. Humphrey needs some exercise, said AJ. Let's take him out. Okay, you can watch him while I clean his cage. AJ gently took me out while Garth put on gloves and began to clean my cage. Both boys chuckled when he got to my potty corner. Everyone does. But he did a good job of cleaning it. While he worked, they talked. Any chance your dad can drive us Monday morning? Asked Garth. AJ shook his head as he gently petted me. He has to leave for work real early. How about your dad? Garth shook his head. He always talks about how he had to walk to school and how lucky I am to ride a bus. I know, AJ sighed and set me down on the table. Watch it, said Garth. He set a row of big books all around the edge of the table. We don't want Humphrey to get away. Maybe he'll be sick on Monday, Garth suggested. Are you kidding? He's the healthiest guy at school. Man, if he wasn't so big, I'd really give it to him, said AJ, making a fist. Me too, Garth agreed. It wasn't hard to figure out that they were talking about big, mean Marty Bean. I don't know why Miss Victoria always takes his side, Garth said after a while. He knows how not to get caught. The boys were silent again until Garth said Miranda was getting a drink at the fountain at recess, and he came up and pushed her out of the way. The thought of someone pushing Golden Miranda, an almost perfect human, really ruffled my fur. Did she tell? Asked AJ. Yeah, he said he didn't do it, Garth explained. Said he wasn't anywhere near her. He said Kirk did it. Kirk almost got in trouble, so Miranda said it was all a mistake to get Kirk off the hook. Kirk the jerk. That's what Bean calls him, said Garth. He's got a name for everybody. That's why he doesn't have any friends. He stepped back and pulled off his rubber gloves. I think that's one clean cage. Great, I squeaked. But what are we going to do about Bean? Bean's pretty funny name, AJ said with a chuckle. Bean Brain. Bean Breath, said Garth. The boys started laughing. Bean Bag. Bean Jeans. Green Bean. Mean Bean. Hey, that rhymes. Mean Green Bean. Mrs. Brisbane would be proud to hear them rhyming. I liked hearing them laugh. However, I was worried. Bean had said something about a mouse trap. The mere mention of those contraptions makes me shiver and quiver, and I didn't want to see anybody get tripped or pushed again. Ready to go back in, Humphrey Dumpty? Asked Garth. Yes, I squeaked, which for some reason made the boys howl with laughter again. Once I was back in the cage, the boys went up to play in Garth's room. That gave me time to think. Here were Garth and AJ, really good friends. They were nice to each other and stuck together. Marty Bean wasn't friendly to anybody, and he didn't have any friends. All my classmates liked Og, but when I offered to be his friend, he leaped at me in a very rude way. The business of friendship is not as easy as it sounds, I figured, just before dozing off for a long afternoon nap. It was nice at Garth's house that weekend. The announcer on TV said it was cold, cold, cold outside, so the Tugwells stayed inside. The family popped popcorn. Did that smell good? And they watched TV and snuggled on the couch. As happy as I should have been, I worried about Monday's bus ride. What I needed was a plan, and maybe a little psychology. Are you sure the little guy won't catch cold?" asked Mrs. Tugwell as Garth was ready to leave for school on Monday. "He's got a fur coat, and I'll cover him," Garth assured her. I was plunged into total darkness as he threw a blanket over the cage. "Bye, Ham!" shouted Andy. "Bye, Andy!" I squeaked back. After all, a ham isn't the worst thing that a person can call you. Soon I heard the squeal of the bus's brakes as it stopped in front of the Tugwell's house. "All aboard!" I heard Miss Victoria say. "Find a seat." "This cage is too big. Can't I sit up here?" asked Garth. "Do you see any empty seats up here?" the bus driver replied. "Get moving and keep moving." I was already queasy just thinking about Bean as Garth walked towards the back of the bus, looking for an empty seat. My cage swayed back and forth like a ship on a rough sea, which didn't help my stomach at all. Once we sat down, the bus started rolling. A block later, it abruptly stopped, and I slid across the front of my cage. Ouch! "All aboard!" I heard Miss Victoria say. "Find a seat, AJ." AJ walked back to our seat. "Move over," he told Garth. "I have to sit on the aisle," Garth replied. "The cage won't fit in the seat." AJ crawled over Garth so he was close to the window. As he did, he bent down and whispered, "Told you he'd be here. He's always here." As the bus lurched forward, my cage wobbled enough for the blanket to part so I could see a little, and what I saw was most unpleasant. Marty Bean sitting right next to us. "Hey, Garth, is that your face or did somebody throw up on you?" I could see the smirk on his face as he leaned in close, mere inches from my cage. "Is that a cage, Bugwort, or is it your purse?" Bean asked. He hooted at his own joke, even though it wasn't funny. It may have been cold outside, but I was getting pretty hot. Og might be unfriendly, but this Bean was even worse. I hadn't thought about Og all weekend. Now it all came back to me. The green skin, the repulsive grin, and the way he had leaped up and scared me. I had taken it from a frog, but I wasn't going to take it from this big bully. This was the time to act. I quickly opened the lock that doesn't lock and took a deep breath before leaping onto Martin Bean's leg. "Stop being mean, Bean!" I yelled at the top of my voice. It may have sounded like squeaking to him, but I made my point. "Eek!" Marty shouted. "It's on me! A mouse!" He threw his hands up in the air and screamed as I ran in a circle on his leg. "Help me! Somebody help!" The faces around me were a blur, and I was getting dizzy. As Marty continued to scream, the other kids began to laugh, softly at first, then louder and louder. "He's only a little hamster," I heard Garth say as he scooped me up in his hands. "He wouldn't hurt a flea." I like being called a he a lot more than being called an it. "It tried to bite me," Marty exclaimed. Everybody on the bus, including Beth and her first-grade friends, laughed. "What is going on back there, Martin?" Mrs. Victoria called out as she slammed on the brakes. They threw a big rat on me." He was almost in tears. "A giant rat!" "I think you'd better come up and sit behind me," the bus driver said. "Now!" She had the girls in the seat behind her move as Marty shuffled to the front of the bus. Garth put me back in my cage. "Thanks, Humphrey," he whispered. "I don't know how you got out, but I'm sure glad you did." "Always happy to help out a pal," I squeaked. The rest of the ride was uneventful. When Miss Victoria stopped the bus in front of Lawnwell School, she made an announcement. "This was the quietest ride we'd ever had. From now on, Martin Bean, I'm assigning you to the front seat. Permanently." Marty didn't argue. He was in too much of a hurry to get off the bus. He could probably hear all the rest of the bus drivers, including me, shouting, "Hooray!" No enemy can match a friend. That's by Jonathan Swift, an Irish author.